Hi, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're here on YouTube and you would like to join the conversation, you can click on the little link down below. And from there, you get into Zoom. Then you'll click on the little link below and you'll get into Makana. And that's where you can ask questions and vote on those questions and chat with each other. If you think you can answer some of those questions and you want to be part of that conversation, you just need to get here early. We do mic checks at 6:40 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And you just need to be here by then so that we can make sure that you're ready for the conversation. And then we open the doors at 6. So if you want to come in and just make sure that things are working, you can come in as early as 6 o'clock. I can't promise what we're going to talk about, but I have to admit that some of the pre-show is starting to become almost as good as the actual show. There's a lot of brainstorming going on around production, and even the pre-show, which starts at 5 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, is actually getting pretty raucous as well. So it's kind of an odd thing that keeps on growing out of the process. We start the general questions at 7 a.m. Any questions you have around virtual production or media production are fair game, and so that's the time to ask them and get those questions in. You are the producers for the show. We don't have a show if you don't have questions. So ask early, ask often, and vote often. The run of show is really driven by what you do there. At 8 o'clock, we do something special, something that we think that would be worth talking to. And we're really excited. We have Matthew Fetcher, Henny, the Bizness, and Kennard. Whoop, it went. I just lost my video there. Kennard Garrett. Sorry. My whole window changed really quickly there. Anyway, they're going to be talking about Audio Kit and what they do with it and how they produce. And we're really excited about that process coming up in the second hour. It's going to be really fun. So we're looking forward to that. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started, Bill.
Our first question comes in from James in Dublin, Ireland. He says, looking forward to the AWS conversion on Friday. Would a cloud instance be a realistic option for even a simple streaming vmix setup, or does it only make sense practically and cost-wise for larger setups?
Go ahead, Guy. I was looking for Guy there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's $1.50 for an hour. So if you have the software and you can run the free trial for 60 days, and then you can buy the basic version for $60, then it's about how do you get your feeds in. So what we've done is made 2 instances, and now we're up to $3 an hour. And one instance is a Zoom instance, and it's feeding NDI over to the other cutting machine. So I have one cutting machine, and that's for the graphics. And the benefit is that, I mean, anybody in the world could be cutting. So you can give those keys to anybody, or you can give them a web browser with a simple interface. And we're doing it over the weekend. Frank was up in Canada cutting, and we're feeding him upstream. So, I mean, it's the future, no doubt. So everybody should be playing with it. I'll put a link in the chat as to a how-to post on a blog that Amazon themselves put up. So it's from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
And we're going to be, again, talking about Amazon AWS at least once a month to kind of get everybody up to speed. So within the next couple of months, we will be building vmix in AWS and doing SRT ingests and everything else as a group. And we might get more organized about it over time. But I think it is an important piece of the puzzle that we're trying to put together. Next question.
Comes from Jonas Dattel of Reutlingen, Germany. Best way to connect a smartphone to a mixpre, should he use a DI or direct input box?
I would recommend, Mickey can probably let us know, but I would recommend considering just the 1/8" jack at that point. You're coming out of the smartphone that way. There is an 1/8" jack input into it, the aux in. So you're already in an unbalanced world coming out of that. And so that would be probably the direction that I would take. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, if the run is short enough, then you can just use a regular 1/8" cable from the device going into the mixpre. I was wondering because the mixpres support being used as an interface on iOS devices, iPhones and iPads. And I just checked Sound Devices website now, and it says it's incompatible with Android, sadly. So yeah, if the run is short enough, like say less than 6 feet, just use a normal 1/8" jack and have the aux input set to line level. But if you need to run a longer cable, then yes, I would then use a DI that would take that 1/8" connection, unbalanced connection, and turn that into a balanced XLR.
Michael?
Yeah, the other benefit of using a DI is if there is a buzz or hum or whatever, you've got the ground lift switch on there to be able to negate that.
Yep. You end up with that a little less with phones because if you power the phone as well, then you have that issue. But a lot of times if you're, we end up with less of that with a phone because it's battery operated if you're using it on a battery. Next question.
Comes to us from, again, join us, Jotel from Reutlingen. How do you store your USB HDMI cables and so forth?
Go ahead, Bill.
So first of all, if they're in the studio and they're going to stay here, it's Velcro wraps and a pegboard for me. The one exception is back when we used to go out into the world for production, I tend to put those small cables in a Ziploc bag with a name on it. And the reason I did that, throw those all in a tub, at the end of the day when I'm collecting my gear to go back, if I have bags that don't have cables, I know I'm going to be short. We all go through cables. We all get them mixed up on a big shoot. That's just a way to check that I take back what I brought to the shoot.
Go ahead, Paul.
I have, I just grab all the cables and take the big end, and then take a Velcro thing around, put a Velcro thing around that. And then I put it around a hook. You could see it. I think you can see it in my background there. See those cables hanging up there? They're just hanging on a hook, so I can easily find, they're right there. Yeah, there they are. So that's how I do it. Easy, and I can easily find a cable whenever I need one.
Yeah, most of the time I use the cable these racks out that I can hang cables by under 6 feet. 6 feet and under, I try to leave them hanging. I try not to coil them if I don't have to. It just means that I don't have to unwrap them there. And then after that, I think we've talked about this in the past. I have an odd thing where I label the cables and I put labels at a certain length along the cable, two labels. And if I bring them together, it means that they all are the same length, the same width when I roll them. I know that sounds really OCD, but it works really well because then when you store them, you can put the cables inside. So the 25s fit, the 10s fit inside of the 25s, and 50s fit inside of there. Yeah, so all of those.
Yeah,
things
here you go, Alex.
Yep.
Here's some cables right here.
Yeah,
I keep them
probably
all
not the approach that I would take. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One thing I do with USB cables, because you seem to collect a lot of USB cables, is I have a Sterilite case that I put them all in, and I will separate them between the micro, the mini, and the USB-C, and then I'll wrap them all up, and I'll take a piece of Velcro around that. That way, if I need like a micro USB, I just pull out the batch of them, open it up, and pull one out. And of course, I test each cable to make sure that it's a power cable versus a data cable, and that's important.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Leland.
Yeah, one thing with mic cables that you really have to be careful about to avoid ruining them is never do this wrap around your elbow into the wrist.
Yep, absolutely. We lost you there, Courtney, and we'll move on. I think we've nailed cables. Next question.
James Duttell of Reutlingen. I'm sorry, James in Dublin, Ireland. Boy, I missed that one. I've been putting off getting a new Apple hardware, waiting for the new larger MacBook Pros. I've decided to get a MacMini M1-16GB. M1-16GB. You're right. Thanks. Which monitors would you recommend? One ultra wide or two standard? And what minimum resolution would you think it's best?
2 4Ks, 24-inch. That's what I would do. I don't like the wide monitors, but I know someone may disagree with me, but I want to have the flexibility of putting them where I want them. Next question. Oh, go ahead, Roscoe, real quick.
I was going to say 2 Samsung 28Ks. I'll put a link in.
Okay. Next question.
Chirig Chihita of Dallas, Texas. When trimming a live stream video on YouTube after the stream has ended, I've heard you lose all live comments. Does anyone have any experience with this before we start trimming video clips?
I don't think you lose the live comments if you just trim the head and tail. If you do anything else, you will, because it'll create a new video. But you should be able to trim the head and tail and not lose the comments that arrive. It's only when you create a new instance of the video on YouTube that you lose the comments. So it's just if you're only trimming head and tail, you shouldn't lose the comments that were there. Next question.
So Guy Cochran in Seattle says, how could we have our WLM audio meters available 24/7 for everyone?
I don't know.
Is that a leading question, Guy?
I don't have an answer. I mean, having a room that people could go into and check it. So for our post and pre-room, we have check your setup, and usually we have the WLMs, but not always there. I need to get them so that we can always just throw them in. It would be something that you'd have to add. Yeah, I don't know how you would do that, because the problem is that it has to be inside of Zoom, because it has to be inside of Zoom because Zoom manages your audio differently than everybody else. And so if you're trying to make it for Zoom, you can't just have an app that you would jump up and test, because the way it manages your audio and compresses it and transports it will be different than Zoom. So it wouldn't be apples to apples. Jeffrey, then Roscoe. Like, for instance, I mean, just put it.
Yeah.
There's a 4 or 5 dB change between when I have original sound on and off. Is a good, and that's just in Zoom. Real quick, Jeffrey, and then Roscoe.
I agree, but you could do a Discord to get it as close as possible. So it would be in Discord. You'd go to the channel. You'd be there. You'd tune the computer would have to be on 24/7. That runs the WLM meters. It's possible.
What I'd love to do is have something that actually gives you a stereograph, as well as possibly even a stereogram, as well as WLM meters, so that you can see the width of your band, the width of your audio. Because right now we're working really hard on how loud it is, but we're not talking about how wide it is. And so the problem is a lot of people have they're having really thin responses, and I find that to be very difficult to listen to for a long period of time. So widening that response out so that you're getting, let's say, 200 to 8,000 or 200 to 10,000. There's a lot of the mics that if we start listening to those, we're getting 1,000 to 4,000. So it's harder to listen to. Go ahead, Roscoe, and then Mickey.
I host one for my department on a U-lean meter on my own audio hijack account, or my own audio hijack license. I'm trying to get my IT department to buy into it. They just won't. I've said, this is a service. We have 35,000 students on Zoom. Why are we not providing this?
Yeah, Mickey.
Yeah, we just need a machine that's on 24/7, and also if we stick to Zoom, I know, like, typically meetings are limited to 24 hours. So I don't know who here has access to starting a meeting that can run indefinitely. But regarding Jeffrey's suggestion of running it in Discord, does anyone know if there's a limit to like the channels in Discord and how long it can run for?
Well, one thing I was just thinking about while you're talking is that you could have an email that WLM is part of, and it could be part of the meeting invite, that it automatically still have to have it join.
And also with Discord, does it actually transfer like a high enough quality that would say accurately allows
it's not quality. That's not the quality. I think Discord is high quality. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's that it's not the same as Zoom. Go ahead, Chris.
This to me sounds like a Courtney problem. I would take one of his little mini toy PCs. I would put just the software on that would require you to get a loudness meter, a spectrum analyzer, and some version of OBS type thing to output it as a camera. And you could sell it as a product, and everybody could just have one on their network that they could network into, and just say,
do that with a Raspberry Pi.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I don't think you need anything more than a Pi. Next, Marty, and then we'll move on. Next question. Marty first, and then we'll go next question.
Yeah, so I created a separate account just for the meter that I use a Ulian meter as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I create a separate account and it goes into the Zoom meeting that way. But between Zoom and Discord or any other platform, they would be processing audio differently.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the issue.
One may not translate directly to the other.
Yep. Next question.
Moving on to Talak Lopez Waterman, our friend in New York. When on a 1080p upgraded account, is the gallery view resolution also upgraded, or is it the same as a lower account? I've been trying to figure this out by watching the stats, not having much luck. He notes, I realize that the squares in the gallery view are never 1080p, but I wonder if they are better in the upgraded account versus non-upgraded accounts.
Go ahead, Chris. You're quiet.
apologize. What I find is the gallery view up to 2 people can be 1080, but when you start adding beyond that, it goes down to 640 by 360.
Mhm.
But a point to point with 2 people, and the only reason I know this is I have a 5K display, so when I put 2 people side by side, they're still very large and requesting a lot of data across Zoom.
Guy and then Leland.
You might want to try experimenting with a 4K display hooked up. So this is the gallery view in 4K, NDI'd in. So this is just a small portion, but you might want to try running some tests like that where you're able to just suck it in as 4K, so you get the higher resolution density of 3840 by, what is it, 2160.
Yeah, Leland.
And something people need to remember is the fact that it all is based on scrapes. If you're taking them into NDI as a desktop scrape, it's relevant on your screen that you're using. So if you have an older monitor that's say 1600 by 900, that's the max resolution you're going to get off that screen. You have to have a 1080p monitor to scrape 1080p of any sort off of Zoom. And on the gallery, those squares, like you said, are never going to be 1080 or 720. They're usually around 360.
Next question.
Ramesh Leonaj, I hope I'm getting your name right, Ramesh, in Colombo, Sri Lanka. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone is good. How's your experience using Shoflo or any other alternatives that you may have used?
So the question there is whether you're talking about Shoflo that is basically kind of starting to compete with they're starting to do streaming. So they've kind of moved to I don't know why my mind is, event production like Restream. What's sorry?
Pro presenter?
No, who's the other one that's we were just talking about it last night. There's Restream and who else does the little
StreamYard.
So StreamYard, so Shoflo is going after StreamYard. So if you're looking for other alternatives, StreamYard is probably a more mature one than Shoflo. Shoflo for a long time was just managing shows. So you would basically be able to, manage your run of show with it, and you could have lots of different teams that were on Shoflo, and they've kind of pivoted a little bit because there's not a lot of people doing shows right now. So adding video was a smart thing for them, and they have a lot of other tools that help you manage those shows. We haven't done any on Shoflo, and we have a lot of people here that use StreamYard. So another option if you're talking about Shoflo for actually running physical shows, that's a pretty good app for that. If you're looking at a competitor to its video product, then I think that you probably look at StreamYard. It's probably
he popped in the chat. He was looking at the management system.
Yeah, I don't know of anything that does it as well. For a long time, they only did Wi-Fi, which was really frustrating, but they now allow Ethernet. And if you're in a room, Shoflo is, I haven't seen anything that, if you want to do it, if you're not, there's basically managing your event in a spreadsheet and then Shoflo, when it comes to events. And we work on lots of events with both, with one or the other. But I haven't seen any other online management app for shows that is nearly as refined as Shoflo. But still, a lot of our teams still use Google Docs to do it. So it's it just depends on the culture. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers of Madison, Wisconsin, and the panel. Often in shooting video where lighting is in question and you have to fix it in post, should you set your camera for a darker or brighter shot?
Go ahead, Roscoe.
Do you want to raise the gain up and see more grain? I mean, that's if you shoot, you really don't want to shoot darker because you're always dealing with a limited, if I use the old terms, 100 IRE, and you want to put as much signal as you can possibly in there. So in the old days, you used to gain up your signal just to get it into that the amount of bandwidth you have. Nowadays, we sample everything. It goes from 0 to 255 bits most of the time. So once you get it sampled, I would say gain it up, get a nice recording, and you can always darken it up a little bit if you have to, or crush it a little bit. But it depends.
Go ahead, Chris, and then Bill, and then back to Jeffrey.
As the grumpy old guy who does a fair amount of post for a living, just shoot it right, please.
Okay, Bill.
Come on.
And one of the tools that has come out in the last 10 years that is really good for that is a false color monitor. Every monitor, I believe, that I take out and shoot in the field should have false color. And if you map it correctly, you'll know exactly what 70 IRE is. You'll know exactly where 100 IRE is. You will know if things drop too dark in the blacks. Yeah. Just switch to that and make sure your shots are right.
Jeffrey?
So this is not me being on site. This is me bringing a at-home kit to somebody's house. I give them a light. I have them turn it on. I'll be controlling all the numbers there, but I can't control how their room is set up or anything like that. So that's why I'm asking this question. Should I err on the side of the dark or the light side?
I would definitely, yeah. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, I would think like say I assume you would like to expose mainly for skin tone. So if majority of the frame would go blown out if you expose for the skin tone, then I would take it down a bit more. But if not, a lot of the frame would be blown out if you get the skin tone right, then I would rather clip those little bits that would be blown out. So it depends.
I was about to say, as Mickey was going to say, it depends. All right, next question.
Moving on to Jan Landy of Las Vegas with another question. My favorite part of office hours is the camaraderie and the shared knowledge of all the panelists. I'd love to know how everyone started out, their major accomplishments, and what they do today. Is there anyone else who'd like to see an office hours dedicated to get to know the panel?
We've done these in the past, and so we'll see if we can do it another time. Maybe a second hour at some point that we'll do another one of those. But we have, if you go back, there's been a couple that we've done where we've kind of wandered through everybody. So I think that there's only a handful of people that there is a handful, and we should. One thing we probably ought to do is when new people come in, do it every, like, oh, these people haven't done it since the last one, and then bring them in. That would probably make more sense. Let's go to the next question.
James in Dublin, Ireland is back with Alex. Did you get to test the NUC computers that Courtney uses?
The NUC
computers.
I don't think they're NUCs though. They're not technically NUCs. NUCs are a specific thing. They are small PCs. No, I haven't yet. I'm behind. I've got some bids due, and then I have Andy giving me a hard time that I'm not keeping up with my homework for Saturday. So I those are the things that are on my list before I get to play with new things. And then I'm building my 4ME with mini ATEMs. That's my other little thing that I'm working on right now. All right, next question.
Alex 4D, and here in the panel from London in England or the British Isles, how much should you charge to attend an hour-long Zoom event? What would you want to experience for, say, $3 US?
What are you trying to do, Alex? Are you still here? There you are.
It was more that it was an interesting conversation we had before we did our mic checks, and I was wondering if we have any opinions specifically on charging. Like, my gut reaction was, I don't know if you want to spend more than $1 given how much Disney Plus costs for a month.
A lot of this has to do with the vertical nature of your market. So as your market becomes more vertical, you want to look at how you can charge more. So for instance, for podcasting, the Cume, like at 1,000 viewers or whatever, you're talking $3 or $4 on YouTube. But a lot of podcasters can get $30 to $50, per thousand. Because their market is very specific. I'm trying to get to that market, and I'll pay more to get to that market. And so it's not the size so much or you're not competing with Disney Plus. If you have something that nobody else has, let's say you're talking about Final Cut or Motion or whatever, people will pay $99 for a day of that, like I would to have you do it. So the thing is that you want to look at that smaller market. The key is having a large enough base, to do it. Like, for instance, I'm not going to try to do the thing I was talking about, I think before the show, or maybe during the show, where we, bring in a bunch of people and do a thing in a big studio. I'm not going to do that until this group is big enough that I know there's enough people to make it pay itself off. I'm not worried about making money on it. It's going to cost, $30,000 to $50,000 to do it. So I need to figure out a way that's going to pay off. Enough people are involved without charging everybody too much. So a lot of it is building up that base so that that when you turn it on, you can activate it and it'll actually work. And so that's the key. Is a lot of people turn to money too quickly, and then that $3 is going to cut huge parts of your market out early, and then it's hard to get to that sustainable size. So when we had for Pixel Core for a long time, and we had 2,000 people willing to pay $50 a month for content, and that gave us a lot of working capital to keep a staff to support them and to do cool things. Go ahead, Leland.
it all comes down to community. Like Alex just said, you could do it a various number of ways. I think as a good example, you could turn toward Patreon and take a look at what some of the broadcasters get for simple contributions. I would recommend tip jars myself for something like a 1-hour event where you just have people stop in, let them decide what the value of the production is rather than yourself up front. That way you get the input from the audience rather than you just judging yourself and saying, I should charge $5 or $10 or $50 for this event. Get some input from the people. Like you said, put an ad on Facebook. See if people are willing to pay a certain price for what you're offering. For just a few dollars, send an ad out and see if people respond to it. It's a great way to get responses.
Next question. Oh, go ahead, Alex. Before we jump on, go ahead, Alex.
The other possible model I find interesting is that obviously newsletters are now the new in thing, and every single social media platform is adding newsletters. But I think the model is really that you have to provide something. If don't start charging for something that you gave away for free, so that means provide something different for more money. So if you're going to do a weekly show, don't charge for it. But if you start doing a daily show, then members can get to see it maybe and then pay for subscription.
Shifting for Patreon's nice to take a look at that Patreon where you get the exclusive content above and beyond. I've seen people make $1,200 a broadcast just because they have 100 people giving them $10 a night for the show.
Next question.
Michael Vosbein of Woodstock, Georgia is up next with looking at inexpensive USB cams, including the C920, the C922, the Brio, and the Zoom Q2N 4K at $85, $100, $200, and $220 respectively. Any recommendations among these or others?
I think that the best all around is the Brio, and then the Huddle Cam because you can control it. But those to me are the two that we try to stick with. If we're budget conscious, then the 920, but that's all we use. Go ahead, Leland.
I was just going to say what you're seeing here is the C920, and I'm looking at the Huddle Cams right now is probably my next purchase.
The Brios are nice because they're a little less expensive than the Huddle Cam, and you can do pan and tilt, inside of them. So that helps. Go ahead, Paul.
This camera here, it's called a Mevio. This to me blows away the Huddle Cam, blows away the Brio. A couple hundred, I think. Yep. And I don't know, plus or minus. Mm-hmm. But it's extraordinary. You can control it with your phone. You can size your picture. You can make it bigger, smaller. You can connect it to all kinds of things.
It's $400. So it could be a lot better, but it's significantly more than the ones of the grouping that we're looking for. So I can find you a lot of things at $400 but I think that it's good. For us, when we're sending out webcams, we've kind of gone, hey, we're going to spend up to $300 max, and really $200 is what our target is. Or we go to big cameras. Go at Roscoe, and then Victor, and then Jan.
On the Mac, you definitely look at webcam settings for $8 too. It's a good thing to buy with those webcams.
Yeah, absolutely, Victor.
This is the HuddleCam HD. What's nice about it is that it has both HDMI and USB, so that you can, definitely have some different shots on it, very quickly access to different shots. And I think it's pretty darn good quality.
Yep. Jan?
If you really want to go down and dirty, really cheap, like about $19 to $20, there's a company called Wyze, W-Y-Z-E. Go to their website. They're on Amazon. They're 1020p cameras. They're not designed for streaming, but there's a modification that you could do. If you watch a YouTube video, you'll see how to do it. So if you're trying to save some money, look at the Wyze.
Good, John.
The camera that Paul showed is 1080. They do have an Ethernet adapter. It can do NDI. This company previously did a 4K camera that you could actually then move around. But more importantly, they're just in the process of being acquired or merged with Logitech. So who knows what they'll be next? But
who's this?
Paul, the
it's
Mimo.
The Mevo Start.
Mevo.
Oh, Mevo's getting acquired by Logitech.
Yep.
There you go. Yep. So we'll see how that goes. Yep. Next question.
Andrew Moya of Oakville, Ontario, Canada. What is a good loopback alternative for Windows?
Go ahead, Jeffrey.
It's our favorite program in the whole wide world. The voice meter, banana, potato, as Mickey said, carrot, couple carrots. But yeah, that works.
Name.
Otherwise, well, they also have another side program called it's audio something. It's basically an audio jack and creates another audio channel inside of Windows that allows you to do that. So that's a side program that they have.
They really should just change their name. Like, they should just give that up. They should get rid of it. It's just such a horrible brand. It's like the pink mustache on the front of lifts. Anyway, next question.
James Stedman in Raleigh, North Carolina. I believe any tips on bringing in a remote presenter with a green screen and then chroma keying them on the production end?
So here's the challenge with chroma key in the cloud or on the other end, and people do it. So if the issue is that you're taking compressed footage. You need every piece of data that you can get to get a good green screen. It's mostly hair detail that you're trying to get. So if hair detail and fine details are what you're trying to get, and you won't get those on the other side because it's being compressed over Zoom or over Skype or whatever. And so the challenge you get into is you're setting your keyer at a disadvantage in that process. And so there are some apps that actually key it locally and then post it. And when they do that, and some of them will actually do it with uncompressed footage, and you get a better key. But I think that keying on the other side is really problematic because of because you'll lose a lot of hair detail and it just looks weird because you're just not giving it very much data. 420. I mean, most of the stuff I key is 444. Like that's what I'm expecting, and you're getting some small sliver of that. Your uncompressed data at HD is 250 megs a second. What you're getting back from Zoom is 1. Or not. So it's that compression throws away all and what it does is the way it gets down to that thing is largely out of getting rid of color. So you're getting rid of all the things you need, all the handles you need to get a good key. So you can do it. But it'll never look great. And we've done a lot of it. It'll look okay, but it'll always look a little weird. Next question.
Moving on, the next question comes from Scott Halver of Chicago. And Scott asks, I've done a few events recently taking Zoom Room outputs into our vmix switcher, but I can't figure out how to remove the on-screen display from the Zoom rooms. Zoom documentation seems a little lacking and or not possible.
So I think you're talking about the, go ahead, Guy.
So I'll just cut to Bill if he doesn't mind me picking on him. What we're talking about here is on the top left and bottom is that on-screen display. So what I'm going to do in vmix here is just blow it up 105%. So right now he's at 1, and you're going to watch that on-screen display stuff. So you just basically, you push in a little bit. And so you might have to have your presenter frame up a little bit different, but you can see that record in the top left. You can see his name in the bottom, and then the number of participants. So you just got to push in just a tad bit and crop it out, and maybe have the talent reframe themselves. That's how you do it.
Yep, that's the easiest way. And until we get a clean feed from Zoom, but it's relatively easy. Hopefully they don't add anything more. Next question.
Moving on to Chris Widener of Lafayette, Indiana. I have an ATEM Mini Pro as the primary portable switcher, and I've been using the original ATEM Mini for a camera feed to it. I'm thinking about getting a LivePro L1 to replace the camera Mini so that I have multi-view. Any downsides to this approach?
Sorry, I think we're all trying to grok it here. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Yeah, I mean, the question doesn't quite make sense is that I'm using but anyways, the biggest thing is you're going to lose any potential for talking to a pocket camera through software, controlling it, doing all the amazing things you can do staying inside the Blackmagic system. But otherwise, as a switcher, it probably works just fine.
Yeah, if you're just doing raw switching. I mean, the main thing is the ecosystem that Blackmagic is building. If you're not buying into it, I don't think you need to buy into it at all. But when you start buying into it, being able to control the cameras, and most importantly, as we're starting to see with some of the Zoom OSC stuff that we're doing, is being able to program to it, being able to activate, everything, you have control over the cameras, over the switchers, everything, because it's got an open API. And so that's the reason that it makes so much sense. And that's why a lot of us are continuing to build around Blackmagic, even if we're not using it all right now. You're investing in hardware that you can control remotely, through OSC or through straight coding, telnet commands, etc. Next question.
I believe it's Josh Howout of Memphis. I'm sorry if I'm getting your name wrong, Josh. What is the best way to send MIDI commands from a Mac M1 to a Windows 10 machine? I'm wanting to have ProPresenter 7 send commands to my lighting software on my PC.
I don't know if we have some of our, yeah, go ahead, Leland.
I would say central command, honestly. Talk to Joe DeMax. His software will connect to just about anything. And if it is something that he has not connected to, talk to him and he'll put it together for you.
Yeah, I mean, there's somewhere in here, there's a mixture of either central command or companion, you know, that is basically managing all of the interactions. I know that with some of the software that I've been working on, I've kind of moved away from talking, for instance, directly to the ATEM switchers and looking at, you're really using OSC as that transport, because then, you know, we can have it go in and out with OSC and pass all that information, whether it's back to Zoom OSC, using ATEM OSC, passing it off to, you know, a variety of different controllers using Companion. So it's somewhere between central control and Companion is probably the right solution to look at. Next question.
Marty Adius of Silver Spring, Maryland, and here in the panel often for posting on-demand playback of a series of Zoom meetings to a private audience. How would you choose between YouTube and other CDNs like Vimeo?
I would decide how much I wanted to pay and whether I want it to be clickable. You know, like, do I want to be able to click through to the YouTube channel, or if I just want it to be only available on that website and have it privately controlled? You know, so are you putting, I guess the question is, are you putting something in front that's going to manage access to the videos? If you are, then you need something that, like Vimeo, that's going to let you do that. You can take away all the, you know, once you have an actual pro license with Vimeo, or the higher end license, you can put those videos up and you can control their access. You can put them on a page that's behind some kind of registration. And with YouTube, you can't really do that. You kind of can do that, but not really. So you're paying for a lot more, you know, access control for that. Go ahead, Bill.
The big key for me, the reason I use Vimeo Pro a lot, is because of the embed controls. Getting that embed link and being able to put it on any bespoke website works flawlessly as a content distribution thing. I don't know, because I don't use it, if YouTube does the same embed as smoothly, but that's kind of one of the things Vimeo is built for.
Well, yeah, it's easy to embed a YouTube link, but what you get for free is that it always clicks through to YouTube. So you can't, you know, you can have it be public and shows up on YouTube. You can have it be unlisted, which means, but they'll still end up going to YouTube, or you can set it to private, which becomes very complicated with a website. So you don't really have the tools that you need, where with Vimeo, you have the ability to say, you know, it pops up as a video. It has the player items options that you give it, that you have a fair bit of control over. And then there's nowhere to go, you know, like, it's just that video is on your web page embedded. And so it's, from a corporate perspective or a closed perspective, it's more useful. Also, as a note to everyone, the questions are running a little lean for the first hour before we get to the second hour. If you've got more questions, go ahead and throw them in. Go ahead, Jan. Jan?
Yeah, sorry about that. Anyway, I just noticed that Vimeo has just offered a new service where they're live streaming. Up to now, it's always been a place where you just deposited your videos and you could send people to Vimeo. Has anyone been experimenting with the live aspect?
Not super new. They've had it for 4 or 5 years now that they bought live stream. So yeah, so Vimeo is, they bought live stream, and so they have a lot of tools around, again, the same thing that I was talking about, the ability to embed a live stream into your web page and not have people be able to click through and be able to control those things, is something that they got when they bought live stream. I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. And they, in addition to that, Vimeo does over the top, you know, OTT solutions, so that they'll actually build your app for you. They've got all the templates to build your app. So if you want to run it on Android or Apple TV or Play TV or all these other ones, or all of them at the same time, you can have a singular look go across all the OTT platforms, and then you can mix and match VOD footage with the live footage inside of those OTTs. And all of that can be, I mean, for building your own kind of network and channel, Vimeo has kind of sliced that up, and they're the only ones doing that whole package to produce it. Not, you know, it's not for free like YouTube, but you can build an entire channel with subscriptions and with pay-per-view and with all those things inside of the Vimeo platform at a fraction of the cost. I mean, I know what it takes to building a very simple app to play some videos is like $100,000 of coding, maybe 200. Like it's like to do it in a real way at scale. When they use the templates, you're talking about 5,000 or 10,000 for each one of those OTTs, because they've already built out all the tools and they're constantly maintaining them. So you're not constantly building out to that. So I look down on it. I admit when they first came out, but it's pretty robust. It's pretty slick. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
One cool thing with YouTube is a couple of weeks ago, they started testing out, and they're going to be rolling out more this private to certain people. So you basically choose it's private, and then you can choose who you want to have watch it. Eventually, I think what they're going to do is they're going to put it into communities. So if you subscribe to the channel and you're on their community for a couple dollars a month or whatever, then you'll be able to watch specific videos without it being public.
Go ahead, Jan.
Yeah, just to go back, if you go to the Vimeo website right now, they are just promoting the live streaming. That's their whole main page. And the reason I went there was because yesterday somebody mentioned that if you're on Vimeo, you could stream live to LinkedIn without having the LinkedIn approval. But I couldn't find that anywhere on the website. I've been looking. So,
next question.
Alex Legnowitz of Toronto, Canada. Alex, Dolby Vision aside, what do you think about VESA HDR?
I believe that VESA HDR is the folks that are manufacturing the monitors don't want to pay for Dolby Vision. I think that's I think there's there's a whole bunch of those. HDR10 Plus is Samsung doesn't want to pay for Dolby Vision. And VESA HDR is, we're BenQ and all these other folks, no, we don't want to pay for Dolby Vision. And so the problem that they have is that probably was going to work, but Apple is just going to pound this into the ground. Like there's not any, this game is over. We can keep on having this conversation, but no one's going to know anything about any name connected to HDR other than Vision within 2 years, because you're just going to see it in every Apple thing, and people are going to be like, there's Dolby Vision, and then there's all those silly little ones that everybody else uses, and so I think that if Apple hadn't done that, I think that we'd be talking about all kinds of different formats and everything else. Fundamentally, the problem is that they're building all these things that are like, it's the VESA 400 and the VESA 1000, everything. In my opinion, it's not an HDR monitor unless it can do 1,000 nits, period. We can talk about how many nits it has, but what we want is, it's not having both sides of it is really, really difficult. Like you want to be able to build metadata into the content, and then have the monitors know what they're capable of when they come in. And so having a 1,400 nit or 2,000 nit monitor doesn't help you if the content isn't built for it. And so that's the fundamental issue with all of these formats, and it's all, haphazard, is what everyone else is trying to do, because they know that HDR is going to be a big deal. They're trying to get into it, and they don't want to pay the royalties. I'm sorry, it's about the flat out. Go ahead, Roscoe.
Sorry, I went wrong with the mute. JD Power and Associates, it's not just that thing you buy, but it hopefully gives you an outside person that says, somebody has tested that says, yes, this is a 400 nit monitor. Yes, this is a 600. Mm-hmm. It actually gives you just that authority to say somebody third party tested what the nits actually were.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for most monitors, you can't say it's 1,000 nits if it's not 1,000 nits. There'd be all kinds of consumer suits that would occur if you did that. So we do get into things where there is sustained brightness versus ongoing peak brightness that get changed, because if you leave your monitor at a sustained brightness of, let's say, 1,600 or 2,000 nits, it's bad for the monitor, it's bad for your eyes. So it's like, I will say, as someone who's seen 4,000 nit monitors, I don't think that that's healthy to do that for a long period of time. I don't think, like people say, when am I going to have a 4,000 nit monitor in my house? I'm like, I don't know if I want one. There's a point where I feel like I'd be hurting my eyes to do that all the time.
It's combination monitor tanning booth. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, exactly. Next question.
Raybar Chenair of Occoquan. I've never heard of that. Virginia. Nice. Has anyone used openreel to do remote shooting where you can control the end user's smart device? Any other solution out there in the wild that's similar?
I don't know of any other solution that does what openreel does. So what openreel does is it allows them to use their smart device. It's you take it. Someone's got an open mic. It allows you to basically set up. I want to do what we call a direct to camera. I want someone to do something directly to the camera. It's not live. I want to see it, and I want to give them coaching. I want to be able to control everything, and it costs a lot of money to do that because they've got this little niche that works and it's been very successful for them. But I don't know of anybody else doing it, Jeffrey.
I am actually working on that right now because what we're going to do is on our home kits, we're going to be recording it and then sending the video via some sort of drive back to me. And so what we're looking at is TeamViewer. Splashtop is another one. These are PC remote things. They remote Android devices. No iPhone can be remoted, just the Android devices. And then I found a couple lesser priced versions that I'm testing right now, but I don't have any specific that I can recommend.
And the openreel one, the reason that they're charging so much is they eliminate all those that you can use the iPhone, and it does do a local record, and it uploads it for you, and there's no coming back to you. And so they've ironed out a lot of those things. There's definitely ways, the way Jeffrey outlines, that you can do it, but it is it's a lot more work on both ends, on the user's end and on the producer's end. For producers who I just want a direct camera from Australia, then openreel is really the only game in town at the moment. Next question.
Keenan Campbell of Princeton, Illinois. After yesterday, I went and picked up a Stream Deck Mini. I know StreamYard doesn't directly support it yet, but I have found workarounds on PC. Anyone have workarounds for a Macintosh?
So I guess they want to control StreamYard with this little guy, right? So you punch the buttons and have StreamYard do the thing. Anyone have any workarounds on the Mac? It's probably a good question to ask on the Saturdays if you see Andy here, Andy Carluccio, or if we're talking about automation. I'm not sure if we have a lot of heavy Stream Deck folks that are also using StreamYard. Go ahead, Guy.
I guess in the meantime, you could use Keyboard Maestro and program some of the buttons that way to take hits.
Yes, absolutely. Next question.
From Kurt Schneider, no location given. I'm looking for lights I can remote control in terms of brightness and color temperature for Zoom meetings. Any suggestions?
That's a very wide open question.
Wide open.
Yeah. So, you definitely have the ability to do that with consumer. Philips Hue and other things in that little world can obviously give you the control over your iPhone. With your iPhone, you can control the color of the lights, and then you start growing into DMX controlled lights. Go ahead, Mickey.
Yeah, you also have lights from the likes of Aperture, and also I believe some of the nanolights have app control that you can use your mobile device to control them. And also our very own Guy creates, sells and I think designs lights, right, Guy? That can be controlled via an app. And you can go all the way up to the likes of the ARRI orbiter and the ARRI, what do they call their light panels, sky panels as well.
Have a few bucks.
So Guy, yours are ring lights?
Yeah, these are the prismatic line of lights. I'm using two of them right now. We can control brightness and color, but the app is local, so it's on a phone, or I'm using it on the M1 Mac and controlling that way. I'm not sure how you would do it remotely unless you're able to somehow take over the screen from the remote machine. I mean, you could do it with Zoom and remote desktop. I can't think of a way to do it remotely. Like if Mickey in the Philippines wanted to control my lights, I can give him screen share, but beyond that, I know I had to do it with Zoom rooms too, but there's some JSON stuff that you can do, but that doesn't help answer Kurt's question. I'm trying to think of a cheap way.
I don't know. I don't think the question was to do it cheaply. I think the question was just to do it. We always want to be careful of that with us. Go ahead, Jan, and then John.
Elgato makes a key light, and you can control that with your phone, and it's Wi-Fi. So I would assume that if it's Wi-Fi, I've never tried it because I'm not here. Why would I want to turn the lights on and off? But you might want to try that. You might want to look into Elgato key lights. They're not cheap, but they're good.
I don't know if that would get you if he's truly looking for remote. I think that like some other house. I don't know if that would work. Go, John.
I'm working with Roger Wagner, and he's working with the microbit computer. And you plug it into USB on the two computers, and you could communicate back and forth. We're using it to create interactive games that students build, but that has all the controls you would need.
Sky, and then Michael, real quick.
Well, I've seen Marty turn on his synagogue lights from his house. So no, you didn't?
He's using I think he's using Arduino. He's building his own.
No,
Yeah,
not
he's-
me.
I don't
Somebody
think-
else.
No, I'm talking about Marty Brennis. Yeah.
Oh.
Well, Marty Brennis has turned his on. I think he does it, but I think he builds those as a back end. The other thing
Sky, you're
that, of
thinking
course,
of
Andy
late-
would. The other thing that you would, of course, Andy would tell you that that's what Streamweaver is designed to do. So Streamweaver, which is something else that Liminal makes other than Zoom OSC, is ability to pass information like DMX controls or OSC controls over the internet. So basically building an SRT connection to move that. So that's what we're experimenting with on my end is using DMX to, so basically I have DMX control on my end, and then I drop a DMX King or whatever on the other end. And then I'm able to use Streamweaver to pass the information from my location to that location and remotely control the color and intensity of the lights. And so we're working on that right now for the next generation of our kits so that we can do exactly what you're trying to do. And I think that's not it's not horribly expensive, but it's not cheap either. I mean, it's a couple $100 per location to have those controls. And then you have to get lights that are capable of handling DMX. Michael?
Yeah, Andy just posted in Mukana that we built Streamweaver
Yeah,
light
to do that.
especially for this. Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I was waiting. I didn't see that, but I was like,
Yeah.
if Andy was here, he'd be like, "Wait, me."
What I was going to say though is if you sent a laptop, or something like that with the kit that's gone out there, which I assume most times you have, if you have any of the Martin high end Able lights, any of that kind of stuff, also on the computer, you can control anything and everything DMX there, just via a dongle. You'll get 2 universes automatically. Able lights, you'll actually get 16, but you can handle it all right there real easy.
We're gonna go into speed round here. We only got a couple more minutes before the second hour. Next question.
Ramesh is back from Sri Lanka with thanks for the valuable discussion from the panel. This is regarding SRT and vmix. I was wondering if the panel has any experience with SRT configurations and tips on how to hit the sweet spot while using domestic, unreliable internet.
This, by the way, is
guy. Sorry.
This, by the way, is where this is where Zixi, I think, does a better job than SRT. When everybody's got fast connections, I don't think there's any difference between Zixi and SRT. When your connections are unreliable, we have found that Zixi scales up and down better than SRT does, and that's the thing that doesn't help you in this environment, but that's the issue. Do you have any so what Guy's showing there is, of course, the Amazon link, which we are going to talk about a little bit more on Friday. And so what that does is gives you a Zixi contribution into AWS from which you can do SRT. You're going to have some, you're not going to be able to do a real-time conversation. You're going to end up with 5 or 6 seconds of latency to do that whole process. So if you want to pull stuff in, it's one of the easiest little pieces of hardware to add that you can just get your contribution in there. Next question. We're running out of time.
Yeah, JJ McKenna of Santa Venetia, Marin County, California. Thinking about Andy's challenge to Mickey regarding OSC-controlled leveling checks and a static Zoom room check, or room to check one's WLM levels. Couldn't these be combined and then have those settings saved in a personal system?
I don't know. I don't know how you.
I don't know if I understand the
I think that the
question.
issue, I think that we need to. I think the idea is somewhere that you can just go and check your mic levels, and if it would, we haven't really found a good way to do that automatically yet. I mean, it used to be. What should happen if I was Zoom is I would build something. I would build the meters. I would take what we've learned how to do here, and I would build meters into Zoom so that when you opened up your audio preferences, it just opened up and gave you analysis of your audio. Would be super useful for Zoom, and it would really set them apart from everyone else. Just saying. Go ahead, John.
Well, in the old days, Polycom and Tandberg used to have a site where you would call in with your video conference gear do a short recording, and then it would call you back and play it back for you.
That's fine. And Skype does that right now. Skype testing service, please. Like there's that we've all, a lot of us who've done Skype have had that. The issue is I don't want to just hear it. I want an analysis. Like that's the thing that would be nothing. Like there is no cost to doing that analysis other than the engineering to put it into the audio.
I've been trying
settings.
to convince DV Store to mount something with the meters that he has.
But I'm saying that, wow, if you put that into the audio settings inside of Zoom, like in the advanced, and you just pop it open and it's got like a real meter and a real thing that gives you some data on it, it would really be slick.
There's a little button there that says normalize audio to value X.
Yep. We got 1 minute. So next question.
Vincent Alvarez Bellingham needing to play videos in a certain order for a conference using VLC's playlist feature, but they're not staying in order. It doesn't follow the order in list alphabetical or file size. Any ideas? And he's on a PC.
All I'm going to say is I wouldn't use, I mean, if you want to get started, you can use VLC for a playback, but you really want to think about real playback systems. If you're going to do this for an event, whether it's Midi or QLab or other things like that, I mean, it's really not an appropriate, VLC is not really designed for that. Anyway, so we're going to now switch over. Our guests are here and we don't want to make them wait. We're really, really excited to have Matthew Fetcher, Kennard Garrett, and Henny, the Bizness, here with us to talk about Audio Kit, and as well as just what they do, producing music and building those out. And so, Matthew, do you want to give us a little bit of an intro?
Oh, hey, everybody. Well, thanks for having us. My name is Matthew. I'm the co-founder of Audio Kit Pro. We're a free and open source music programming group, and we make apps. We power over 100 million app installs, and I've personally been involved in 7 #1 apps in the past 3 years. And like you said before, like it can be really expensive to make an app. You threw out the number $100,000, and the reason that is because it's really hard to do low-level signal processing. But what AudioKit does is gives you all these components for free. Like if you want a reverb, you don't have to spend a year learning how to write a reverb. You just add 1 line of code. Or if you want a filter or equalizers or any kind of signal processing, it's just free and open source. And what that's allowed us to do too is meet a lot of awesome people like you guys and work with Grammy winners like KG and Henny here. And for almost no money, we created this app with Morehouse, and it went to #1 in the App Store, and they're more interesting than I am. So I'll just throw it over to them.
So, well, but how, like, explain to me a little bit before we get started. Is like, what was the thought process here? Like, how did you go down this path?
Well, I wanted to make a synthesizer app. And for those watching, Alex actually highlighted one of our apps on MacBreak, and it's AudioKit Synth 1. And it's now the most popular synthesizer for iOS. And the reason that
by the way, the reason I talked about it on MacBreak was because I opened it up and then I lost like a whole Saturday, like just sitting there, just like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Like and I just kept on playing with it. And my mind just was kind of going off, and I just had so much fun with it. I was like, I can't believe that I can just download this and use it anyway. Go ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So like it just got better and better, and more people contributed. And then we've got all these sound designers and these great programmers from like everyone from Adobe to Ableton to people all around the world just volunteer their time. And, we just want to make audio better for everyone, for the programmers, for the musicians. And, we have this philosophy, like just because you can make money off musicians doesn't mean you should. So we just want to provide tools to empower both emerging talent, whether it's a programmer or it's a musician, a producer, or a student locally here at Morehouse or Georgia Tech. So,
and what is the business model? Like, how do you actually pay for this?
Well, since we're all volunteers, it's pretty easy. Like once you get a lot of money involved, it gets hard. But, we have released some apps, and every single one we've been really blessed has gone to #1 on the charts in the App Store. So it does provide us capital to like, keep paying, musicians to make more sounds so that we can get it out. But as developers, we're mainly just kind of volunteering, because that's the biggest cost there.
We would never do that here. We have to have it. This is all volunteer too. Like we get it every day. This is all, we're in the same boat. I really like that what you're doing here. And I'm always just kind of amazed. I'm like, how do you do that? Anyway, so it's amazing. And now we have got And by the way, if you've got questions for Matthew or KG or Henny, definitely just put them into Makana, and we'll ask them. And we'll go ahead and jump to KG and Henny. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're using Audio Kit for?
Okay, I can start with this. Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. So,
well, and before you get into that, give us, with each one of you, let's get a little of your background before we start talking about that. KG,
okay.
And then Henny.
Yeah. So, I am a music producer, songwriter, arranger, composer, and actually educator. I actually, spent the last 20 years in the music industry professionally, and have produced for a number of top artists, ranging all the way from the Pussycat Dolls, Drake and J. Cole, all the way up to my Grammy Award winning record with Sting and Shaggy in 2019. So, a couple years ago, we met Matthew, and I have a background actually in mechanical engineering. Nice. I attended Morehouse College. Yeah, so applied physics and mechanical engineering. So I've always been a tech guy. And as far as music is concerned, it's one of the biggest drivers. Technology has always changed the way we create, the way we distribute, and really drives our industry. People don't really understand the breadth of that. So met with Matthew a couple years ago. Henny and we attended school together, and he has a career and records that he's produced separately from me. But we came up with this idea as he's been working in the iOS space for production for quite some time to create an app of our own. And we enlisted Audio Kit and talents of Matthew and the team to help us develop what we're going to be our first app, which is called House Mark I. It's an emulation of my 1974 Fender Rhodes electric piano in our studio at the Ray Charles Performing Arts Center. So that's enough with me, Henny, if you want to pick up.
And when is that coming out? When's the new app coming out?
It actually came out in October.
Oh, okay. So I'm behind. I feel like I thought you said that you were building it. I was like,
no, we released it, as Matthew said. We were so fortunate that it shot to #1 on the App Store. So
that's
everyone should download it now.
Yeah, absolutely. If someone can put a link into Makana, we will download it now. So just throw a link in, and we'll go from there. Go ahead. And Henny, tell us a little bit about your background. Oh, can't hear you. You're muted somewhere.
All right, am I back?
You are.
Hello. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Sorry about
all
that.
Good. All right. We all have multiple systems. We're kind of used to it. You probably saw half of it. It happened like 20 times in the first hour. All right, go ahead. Next.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, but I reside here in Atlanta as well. And me and Kennard have been in the music industry. I'm a music producer, songwriter, a Grammy Award winner. I'm a professor at Morehouse College, along with Kennard, as well as a fellow YouTuber like yourself. So I've been on the YouTube channel for about 5 years, trying to show people that it's possible to be professional using iOS apps, and just your professional needs. So whether it was music production, video editing, online branding, those are some of the things that we are teaching at Morehouse College, as well as just trying to show the world that it's possible to really work with some of this newer technology when it relates to music production and video editing and things like that. So yeah, we released the House Mark I. That was back in October. This is kind of what it looks like right here. And as you can see, it's an emulation of the great Fender Rhodes that's in the studio, and it has some great presets. But overall, for us, we just wanted to make sure that, for the students out there, for those who wanted to kind of get started with maybe piano or electrical piano, things of that sort, that they have a great sounding place to start with. Or if you're a seasoned musician, you have another tool in your toolbox that you can take with you, because not only is it iPad friendly, but it's also iOS and iPhone friendly. So It's been working really well, and we've got great feedback from not only touring musicians, but also, you know, from music producers who work in the studio every day. And so I'm a music producer, and I've worked with, you know, like Chris Brown, Drake, and Jay-Z and 50 Cent. So over the years, I've worked with a lot of hip hop and R&B acts, and it's worked really well to be able to be not only in tech, but also in music. So that's kind of the start. Yeah.
And beyond the app, is it okay if our folks ask you a little bit of questions about music producing? Because we're going to probably dig into it. So if you've got questions about how you guys approach your art, as well as the app, so it's Housemark One, and there's a link in Mukana, and we I just bought it, so I'll play with it a little bit.
Thank you. The proceeds do go back to the Morehouse Music Program, so you are helping a good cause there.
That's fantastic. Go ahead, Jan.
Just an FYI, in case you guys don't know, because they said the Fender Rhodes, that is probably the most popular sound for jazz musicians that they want, and it's the hardest thing to find because Fender stopped making it. So it's a really cool thing what they've done. Very cool. If you don't understand the concept of why they did that.
And as we're kind of moving through, what did it take to build the app based on, you know, like you have audio kit? What did it take to actually put it together and get it released? KG?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things for us is we started talking about the design with Matt. We wanted it authentic, and we liked a lot of the user interface stuff. Alex, as you've probably seen with Synth One, this looks very similar from a UI perspective. But the biggest thing for us was actually creating the sound and making sure that sound was a true emulation of the Fender Rhodes, which it is an electromechanical instrument. It weighs about 200 pounds. It's not a thing that you have easy access to. As you said, it is not, you know, being produced anymore. So one part was not only to get the sound of the DI that was actually coming out of the instrument, but we also wanted to emulate the key noise. We wanted to emulate the noise of the pedals. So we recorded this instrument very meticulously in the studio. As you can see in that photo there, we've used the Earthworks drum mics, which are very sensitive and very true to emulating those percussive tone elements. But we sampled, you know, all of this 88 key instrument, and that was probably not the hardest part, since we know audio and sound. I ran this through an SSL console and got a good, nice tone from it. The biggest challenge for us was trying to get something that sounded this great to a size that was acceptable to run on your iOS device without any glitches. So Matt, I'll let you take that part there.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you guys are a pretty technical audience, so you probably know that, you know, for a while you have a limit of 150 megabytes for over the air network cellular downloads. So you have to keep it, you know, small. And plus, we know from, you know, having 1 million users that people complain if something is over 200 megabytes. So yeah, we really worked hard to get the feel of it and all the key noise and everything, and still have it small so you still have room for all your photos. And what I found really remarkable about what they did too is they involved the students and taught them sampling and app making. And we actually have almost all the code online for free on GitHub, so that people can make an app similar to this and make their own sampling app. So I think that was very generous of KG and Henny with their time for both the students and allowing us to release the source code. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So learning, you know, teaching the students to learn sound placement, you know, mic placement, and then the difference between, you know, a line signal versus, you know, a direct input, and understanding a little bit more into Pro Tools and audio processing, you know, the whole, just having it patched correctly, and just some of the things that we wanted to be able to show these students that it's possible to start creating these apps while they're in school, and portions of this, the app just, you know, go directly back to them. So it's great.
That's awesome. Go ahead, Chris Fenwick, and then we'll go to questions.
I was just wondering, yes, everybody loves the Fender Rhodes. Any discussion on making a Yamaha electric grand version? Another great piano of the past.
Right. We haven't gone down that path yet. We actually are talking about what is next. And for us, this process started about what do we use? What would we like to have access to in an iOS environment? And of course, that Fender Rhodes. And it's been great. Now thinking about this during the pandemic, I can't go to my studio and use that. So the fact that I have it on my phone and my iPad is really incredible. So we're exploring options. And you're right. That is another great instrument that if you could have access to would be phenomenal. So yeah, we're figuring out what's next.
Yeah, if they sample it, we'll create an app out of it.
That's great.
Get on it, guys.
That's great. What's interesting, it has me really thinking about it. One of the things that one of my favorite instruments I think I've talked about in the past is the Mbira, and I'd spent a lot of work did a lot of work in Zimbabwe, and worked with a lot of Mbira players, and being able to figure out a way to build something that can allow me to sample that and reproduce that sound, I think would be a really interesting puzzle. There's a hard part with that, is that it's not a keyboard, that because you're pressing down and pulling up at the same time, and so you're playing as many as 4 notes, in concussion. So you have to kind of figure out what that would look like. But I think it'd be really interesting. If you're a panelist and you have questions, go ahead and throw them into Makana so that everyone's on the same page. And otherwise, let's go ahead and jump to the questions.
Okay,
Sure.
Michael J. in New York City has our first one, and he says, "Hi, Henny. What are some of the tools you use on your stereo bus to affect loudness and clarity?"
On the map, you said that one more time. I'm sorry.
He says, "What are some of the tools you use on your stereo bus to affect loudness and clarity?"
KG, you want to take that? I think for a lot of it, when we work together, KG, he sits more in the engineer's seat, working in the studio, and I'm over there banging on drums and stuff. So what would you put on the master bus, KG?
Yeah, so for me, what's been a go-to, and once again, I have access to a studio where I can use a lot of outboard gear, but I've really gravitated more towards not only my MacBook Pro, but an iOS environment. So for me, I've been using the Slate digital stuff for years. It sounds really incredible, but of course, the limitation with that is that they haven't made an iOS version of that. So what has been my go-to as of recent is actually the IK Multimedia M box that they released, which is phenomenal for being able to really tweak in an almost type of lunchbox setting. All that I need. I have my tools there, my compressors and EQs and my limiter, all to just sweeten up the sound on my master bus or my stereo bus in iOS. And we'll probably talk about this, but I do a lot, and Henny does a lot through AUM, and we use GarageBand also in the iOS environment.
And can you outline AUN just for folks that are watching?
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Okay.
So yeah, with AUM, it's kind of like a digital mixer. I'm not sure if you guys are hearing feedback from me or
nope.
Not sure what happened. Okay.
You're clean.
I
Yeah,
hear
but
2 mics is what I hear. 2 mics.
Okay,
Yeah,
you did hear
you
2
closed it
mics.
off.
Is it gone
Yep.
now? Yeah,
Yep,
I
it's
was
gone.
trying to.
You're clear.
I was loading up my iPad, and it started to feed the channel in. But yeah, AUM is a digital mixer where, if you look at it from the standpoint of making sure that you have all these different channels that you can do, from loading up your AUV3 plugins, which are, some of the things like the Housemark one is based off of. It's a plugin that you can use multiple instances of, or just any of your audio tracks, as well as being able to bus, route, mix, and completely put together an idea, versus your traditional DAW, where you just, kind of have something like Logic or Pro Tools, where it's very linear based, and, it's based off of, the things that you see with a lot of MIDI and things of that nature. So we use AUM a lot, and it's a great way for us to kind of get our ideas started. And then from there, we either bounce those ideas to more traditional DAW. If I'm in the iOS environment, I'll use something like Cubase 3, or some other people have been using GarageBand, because it's kind of great for a linear. But other than that, you can export directly and airdrop it to, Logic or Pro Tools, and it works extremely well.
What had you really do this? I mean, it's definitely a thought process that the two of you have taken on, of really moving like iPad first, or iOS first production. Where did that come from? Like, how did you evolve to that? Because it's not a usual thing for studio engineers. They're usually like, oh, that's cute, and then I'm going to use all my big hardware. And so what created that thought process?
Well, for me in music production, I think it was a situation about 5-6 years ago where I was looking in my studio and I looked at everything that I had going on and all the synths and all the racks and all the plugins, and I was getting heavily invested in a lot of just outboard gear, and I wasn't making as much music as I used to. And I was thinking to myself, what is it that's going to just limit my ideas, limit the way that I can approach this? Maybe like when I was younger and I didn't have as much. And so I looked on my couch and I saw this iPad Air 2, and I was like, well, I know that there's some more apps out there. Let me see if what's possible. Right. And from there, I just continuously started to develop more ideas from the iPad. And then it was, okay, let's shut everything in the studio down and see how far we can go with this. And then it was about the interfaces, using things like Dropbox, using, iCloud and, Google Drive to get all my files into the iPad. How much storage am I going to need? How can I do things so when I take it to the studio, they're not going to laugh me out the room? And of course, they tried to laugh me out the room until I started to press play and they heard some of this stuff and they're like, oh, wow, this is really possible. And then from there is what started the YouTube channel, because, me and Kennard were just like, we need to really push the message forward and let people know that it's possible, even if you're a professional. And so that's kind of been the journey, and it's been getting incredible in the community. It's been awesome.
Yeah. With all of these things, when you move to software and then with iPads, I think it starts changing the way you think about it, because a lot of times you're limited by the context of what you're in. When you're streets, you have to take streets. So when you change the entire infrastructure, it gives you a different layer of creativity. KG, how did you?
And Henny was an early pioneer. I was one of those traditional guys that I wanted to stay in the studio, although I had moved to Logic basically as my main sequencing and production tool. But, being able to put my hands on the controls of an SSL or just having a mouse to control. But one thing that I did realize after seeing him work in that environment is that there's something here. As we've seen with technology time and time again, it evolves, it changes us, it forces us in some way. And, I have a tech background also, and I just understand the evolution and power of these devices. We've seen the evolution of the iPhone and then the iPad to the point of these iPad Pros, which is just as powerful as our MacBook Pros that we're using years ago. And the beauty of something like this coming in ground level is that we can have impact on what are the tools that should be used, because we think about it from musicians and creators, but also understanding the technology and what's missing there. So filling in the gaps. We have the power in these machines. Now it's just filling in the gaps to get us the tools to be able to complete these projects. So I tell you what, it was the perfect timing when I did start, because like I said, this pandemic has had me not being able to travel and be in the studio and not being limited because I have my tools right here. It provides another way for me to create and be creative.
That's fantastic. Yeah, it's amazing how far. I mean, if you look at where people are going, even like a Billie Eilish, is right. They're doing that in their bedroom. It's no longer something that I know that we had a person on a couple months ago, Peter Himmelman, and he got a signing bonus from Sony in the early 90s, and he went out and just built a home studio with the sign, and that was like that. That's what he did with it, and Sony was horrified. Like, I worked at Sony when that happened, and all of us, I was in Sony Music, and everyone was talking about, we can't let this happen again. Like, they wanted to add stuff into the contract because having artists become self-sufficient was not something that they were excited about at all. And it really is something that's not only self-sufficient, but it can be done, in a plane. And a lot of these apps, I have a lot of music apps, and I can't say that I'm very good at it. But what I can say is that I find it just entertaining as a user just to sit on a plane, or when we used to do that thing when we sat on planes. Yeah. But sit on a plane and just sit there, and I can entertain myself for hours just playing music and creating stuff and play. And even if it didn't come out, that's the interesting thing, is that it was still something fun. All right. Next Next question, Bill.
Sky is in asking where the guys see themselves on a spectrum between artists and craftsmen. How does your brain work?
Henny, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think that's, I don't know, artist and craftsman versus like musician and tech guy. It's kind of like, the epicenter of both. And I think that's the fun part of being on, discussions like this, is understanding just how much, they meet in the middle. And so when it comes to the art, it's, I try not to be super technical. I try not to be super craftsy. And sometimes, those mistakes or those distortions or some of those things that are lo-fi or anything can actually bring out some of the art, which technically isn't necessarily going to be right. But I mean, for somebody who likes to meet in the middle, it's trying to find the high fidelity in the lo-fi, or trying to find the some type of filter in something that's super digital, right? So like on my camera right now, I have what they call those Tiffin Black Pro mist filters on to bloom the highlights and stuff to make it not as sharp, not as digital, so you can be a little bit more artsy, but I want it to still be crispy and clean. So you see that intersection where you want to be crafty, but you also want to be artsy. So that's kind of how we work, KG.
Yeah, I would say, one of the biggest inspirations for me as a musician that really piques me artistically is experimentation, listening to sound, being able to do what we're doing on an iPad. I equate it to when Les Paul was playing with tape saturation back in the day. There's been a lot of creativity sparked from us just experimenting, and to have access to do that. It really drives me. I've been playing piano since I was 3 years old. I'm just north of 40 now. So I'm not saying I'm getting bored with things, but I need challenges. I need things to inspire me. And being able to have the ability to be on the tech side of it, to experiment and create, drives my artistry.
Well, Henny, hello from Seattle.
Hey.
I'm very curious, were you a part of the music? Were you nurtured here in Seattle with your music? Which high school did you go to?
Sure. I grew up in Federal Way. So
Okay.
I went to church in Tacoma, and I was a part of the church choir in Tacoma, and I went to Decatur High School. So I was part of the band and also the chorus, but a lot of the times I was just trying to play piano for the girls at lunchtime. So it was one of those situations.
The classic
where
path to music.
that was the path. And when I graduated and came down here to Atlanta, it was just more so about finding ways to make friends who wanted to do the same thing, freestyle and make hip hop music. And this is in the late 90s, so we were just trying to do our best to get a start. And I still have a lot of friends out there who are doing music, and a lot of guys who are doing very well in the music industry. And it's been a great journey, even coming from the hometown and trying to figure out how to actually get some exposure to those who are out there in I guess the industry. So it's been fun.
You've got more friends on the Northwest, and I'm glad to hear. Glad Hotland is helping you out.
Thank you. Right
Next
on.
question. Next question.
Leland from the panel here is in with, not to go off topic, but can Henny tell us how he's pulling off the circular picture-in-picture? We like that.
Okay.
Spotlight.
So I'm using Ecamm Live, and so in Ecamm Live, let me see if I can. I don't know.
Yeah,
if
we
I can
both
pull
are.
that up. Yeah, me and KG are using Ecamm Live, and there's a picture-in-picture thing where I can change the actual size of the picture. I can change it to wide. I can change it to square or round.
That's
you
great.
can move it anywhere, and that's one of the reasons I chose Ecamm Live over OBS. It's just the simplicity of it and being able to do things. And so my journey from trying to find the A10 Mini Pro to going with something like a YOLO box, or do I try just to use a Stream Deck with Ecamm Live, that's kind of where we fit, and it just works really well for me and KG. Yeah.
Good to know, because I tried pulling it off over here, and you guys probably saw the overlay I just did. That's really the only way we can pull that off in vmix is to green out a 1280 or a 19 by 1080, and then cut the circle in it using an editing software in order to get another frame of the video in there. So his technique is much easier.
It was great. Next question.
Mickey from the panel here. When sampling from the Fender Rhodes, did you utilize an automated mechanical system to physically play the notes, or was it fully played by humans? And if so, how did you manage the variability in velocities?
Yes, that
that was the challenge.
Yeah, from his expression, you can see it was played by humans. We wanted our hands and the students' hands actually touching those keys. That's one of the interesting things about that instrument. Everyone sounds different. It's like most analog gear. You play a different Fender Rhodes, you're going to get a different sound. But capturing those mechanical feels and sounds were the thing that we needed to do. Of course, we couldn't record as many velocity layers as some larger sample instruments, but with the Fender Rhodes, I don't think you're not going to have that many different variations. So it took us quite a bit of time to get through that and switching off or having the students really try to capture it. A lot was done on the editing side. I mean, we'd probably play a note maybe 15 times just to get the right velocity before we went over a certain level. But yeah, it was all human. We wanted to make sure it sounded and felt human in the way it was reproduced.
And the biggest thing was just making sure that, when we played a lot of these emulations on, other platforms, you didn't hear that, the sound of, somebody touching and actually, tapping those notes. And so that's one of the key noise. If you can, look in our, the app here, you can see that, Matt had it, very well, laid out, but you can also see here on the right side, you see key noise that you can toggle on and off, and you can actually dial in the noise of how much, key sounds you're hearing. So yeah,
that's great. Yeah, what you say, Mickey?
Yeah, that's interesting because maybe in a more intimate, maybe solo, you'd want to hear a bit more of the key noise. But if you're mixing it into a more electronic track, I guess, or a more upbeat track, you might want to get rid of that. So it's nice to have that flexibility in the instrument and the VI.
Right.
Next question.
And it actually comes to Mickey as well. He's following up with, I am seeing what seems like Earthworks mics in the behind the scenes photos of the sampling process. Can you talk about your microphone choices and placements for sampling?
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I've really been a fan of Earthworks products and used them on a lot of drums that we've recorded in the studio. Really simple. I'm a type of guy, when I think about mixing sound and capturing sound, I think about some of the classic records that we are always trying to emulate. When they're making these emulations and plugins, there's always some vintage tool that they're using. So I think about mic placement and mic selection in that same regard. Less is more for me. If I can capture the sound, if I can isolate to exactly what I want to capture, that's the way to go. And like I said, I've used these Earthworks mics on many drum recordings and even some live stuff that I've done. So, I know how it captures those nuances as far as instrument mic is concerned. And I was like, let's try it out. We tried out a number of different mics and capturing these sounds, because that's what was recorded by the mic themselves. So everything else came through DI, and then we layered them all together. But it's one of my favorite mics for picking up the nuances of percussive sound. So it was a natural go-to for me.
How long did it take you to do all the samples?
Wow. Well, we started. We did it a few times because we went. It was trying to hit it as seamless as possible on. I think we did every 6 or 7 keys, every fifth key. Yeah.
Things like that,
And we did 3 velocities, but when we started getting into those higher notes, some of those didn't really sustain like we needed them to sustain. And but that's the joy of using some of this vintage pieces of equipment, especially when you're emulating it. It's there's not one Fender Rhodes that's the same. They all have a little bit of different tuning. They all have a little bit of different, vibration to it. So, we just did our best to make sure that we got it as close to as possible, and then made sure the levels were just as good. But we definitely did it a while. So, could you?
One quick thing I forgot. You asked about mic placement. That was kind of like, let's trial by fire. Let's test it out and see where we're getting the best levels coming from it. Like those Artworks mics are pretty sensitive and pick up very well. But we made sure that we not only sample the actual sound of the keys, which in the studio, we recorded this in a live room. Everything was played back in the control room. You didn't hear any output. All you were getting was the sound of those keys and the noise that was coming from it being pressed down. We also took the lid off, as you saw in the photos, that we wanted to capture even the mallets hitting the tines. So all that is built into that key noise sound. And once again, it was almost trial by fire. Like, how are we getting the most sound here? And then we went back and mixed it down later on to make sure the levels were good.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Go ahead.
I keep going.
I was just going to say, like, I think it's so much more inspiring when you have like people like KG and Henny, Grammy winning artists who bring like their own vibe to recording and sampling versus just some sort of automated system of sampling. And you can really tell it when you play it. It feels like an instrument. It doesn't feel like an iPad or iPhone. And I hope we see more of this like beautiful, perfect imperfection and, creating something that doesn't sound so cookie cutter. So I'd encourage most app developers to work with real musicians and producers.
The term in Japan is wabi sabi. It's this clean but imperfect. And there's a lot of that. But wabi sabi is kind of an approach, to craft that I think is very similar to this. Next question. Let's keep moving.
John Prado's up in the panel from Las Vegas. Many of my musician friends tell me the monetization of music has changed. Where are the revenue centers in the music industry now, and where do you see them going to be in the future?
Well, we just got finished teaching a course where we looked at really how technology has changed everything. And once I always go back to that, technology is the driver. I look at the film industry as a baseline for what happens in music. As we saw the digital age and digital distribution totally revolutionize the way we consume media. From a movie and television standpoint, the same thing has happened in this streaming age of music. So as the record companies have tried to recover from this huge change, which we saw this happen in the change from cassettes and vinyl to CDs, which I think it was 1999 was the highest year of revenue for the record industry. Not because we sold more, but of course, because the cost of reproduction was a lot less. So you had more margin there. But as we were trying to get our arms around how to monetize this music, what you're seeing happen because of this direct to consumers, DTC model, you're finding more ways of adding revenue. What we're seeing, and Henny, you can talk about this a little more, is that you have social media platforms that are licensing content now that might not be a full song. It might not be a full 3 minute, 40 second, but revenue is being generated. We've seen it in our age because we grew up at a time of there wasn't YouTube revenues coming in for music videos. But of course, that was a huge change. I remember seeing the first person like, man, they're getting checks from YouTube. This is crazy. So as we evolve more with our technology and other ways to distribute media and content. And as legislation catches up, we're both members of the Recording Academy and big on the advocacy that went into place for the Music Modernization Act. We'll start to see other revenue streams created, legislated, and fair revenues being shared amongst creatives. And you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing is the fact that now we're seeing the music industry turning more into the branding industry. So it's really about how we can take little short bits of your content and turn it into a lot of promotional things for a lot of different products. And we've seen that with how TikTok is completely exploded, and now you're starting to see so many people get quote unquote TikTok deals with are pretty horrible deals for a new artist, to be honest, because you're getting locked in a deal based off this 15-second moment that happened in your life, and that could, span basically the entire length of your artist's career if you don't negotiate it correctly. And they're taking the music and things that are becoming hot and becoming viral, and then they're placing that and building a brand around, that person, so that they can sell other products to bring in more revenue for the companies that these artists are signed to. So we look at it now and we're just like, okay, what are the best ways? If you're independent, if you're not somebody who is already signed to a label or something, how can you start to make a career out of this and start to really think of it not just as your talent and the things that you're able to do, but how can you brand yourself, and how can you put yourself out there next to the things that you are that you're excited about. So if you're into sneakers, or if you're into gadgets and tech, or if you're into a lot of apparel and things like that, start to find ways to promote yourself that way alongside your music, so that when these streams comes, you can start to promote yourself and start to get these sponsors and other things to actually build revenue for yourself. So that's kind of how the industry is moving, and we can see that with a lot of these younger artists trying to get these sponsor deals fast. Yeah.
Do you think that the artists still need the record companies?
Say that again.
Do you think that the artists still need the record companies?
Yeah,
so I used to work for Sony Music. So back then there was no way out. So in the early 90s, you had to get a record deal. But I also knew friends that got signed to, let's say, MCA right before the uni purchase, and their album just got lost, and all their rights and everything else went with it. And they, and so it was a horrible situation for the bands that didn't get through. And I'm just curious from your perspective, like with Apple Music, and with Spotify, can a band, do they need the record companies, or they just need someone to market their work?
So yeah, I think you hit it on the head, Alex. Marketing, that's always going to be the thing. And as I said, we just taught this course, and we talked about the impact of top 40 radio when it became a part of the standard, which of course influenced the way people purchased. That still exists, and the record labels were feeding these radio stations and servicing their records to radio for these artists, which is basically promotion in some sense. That still exists today with Spotify and Apple. Technology is an amazing thing, as it offers an access point for those who have not had access to be able to participate, to be able to express themselves. But what ends up happening is whoever shouts the loudest is the one who is heard. So what you're seeing now from the label perspective, whether it's the majors, the three majors in here in the US, or from brands that have the ability and the budgets, they can still influence pretty heavily, which drives the consumer to a certain area. But there are instances and cases where people do break through, and they are able to make an impact with that direct to consumer distribution. It's about what happens next.
Yeah, I think it's always going to come back to, you can get started and you can start building your leverage, but inevitably, those who control the distribution are going to control the industry. And that's what we talk about in the class. And so, when you're dealing with Apple Music, when you're dealing with Spotify, when you're dealing with these labels, you're knowing that you have all knowledge that you're going to have to deal with them at some point to get out there in a bigger umbrella, right? To have more eyes on you, to get those bigger deals, to get those things that we've been talking about. And so at some point, if that's what you want, you can you probably leverage what you have going on if you build your brand big enough before you actually sign a deal. Now, if you sign the deal and you don't have as much leverage, then you're just going to be stuck there trying to figure out how you can, get anything going past, what they're telling you to do.
Yeah. Next question.
Well, it's as much a question as it is a plea. They're looking, Michael Fraley's looking for you to turn your attention next to the Hammond B3 with Leslie. Fabulous old sound.
Well, I mean, I'm going to give you this one here. IK Multimedia has an incredible Hammond organ. It's probably one of the most expensive iPad apps I have in my arsenal. I think it's right under $150 for an app. And I said, it better sound good. It really does. So if you're looking for one, instead of us recreating the wheel here, IK Multimedia has a phenomenal Hammond B3 organ.
And what do you do to control that? You're not are you using the iPad directly, or are you running a controller into it? Are you using the IK? Yep. So that.
Yeah. So this is what we use a lot of the times. This is called. This is by Arturia. It's an X key. They have it in Bluetooth format, and they also have it wired USB, where you can use it with a sustain pedal. But as you can see, it's very super thin, almost thinner than a normal Apple keyboard, and it has great keys, and they work and travel really well. And so this is kind of our go-to for the last few years, and this is kind of how we've been playing all our music.
Yeah, I'll add to that. It's one of the coolest things I've seen on iOS music is I was on Instagram one day and saw Henny in the studio with Herbie Hancock, and Henny had Herbie playing one of those X-Key Airs into an iPad, and I didn't even realize it, but he was playing my app, and I was, like,
I had to represent for you, Matt. It's all good.
Next question.
Okay, Jan Landy from Las Vegas is back in with, what audio interface do you use to get your music from your app on the iPhone, iPad into an SSL, and why? Also, I'd like to hear about your entire audio chain of equipment that you prefer.
Okay.
Wow. Okay. So we've tried a number of different interfaces over the years, and the great thing about some of these developers and some of these companies that they're actually building really good quality, inexpensive interfaces for iOS devices. So I really like the things that Apogee are doing. They have the Apogee Jam Plus, which is great for, those who play guitar or bass. It's a little stick. I could go grab it in a second, but they have that. They have the, the Apogee One. They have the Duet. But then there's, other companies like Audient who make the Evo 4 and the Evo 8. They have great price points with great mix pre's. And basically what we're doing is just kind of running, our auxiliary out from the interface into the SSL board directly in using, some cables. And so, there's a ton of different, like the Fireface, I2E, 2IE, one of those. They work well, but for here in my space, I know I'm using the Audient Evo 4 and the Evo 8. I also have some interfaces from Apogee and Shure. So
yeah, I'm a big Apogee guy. I think when people were starting to make smaller audio interfaces, number one, I've always loved the converters, and I love a lot of the albums that were created on using those Apogee converters and sound and the roundness and the bottom end that they provide. But when they switched it up with the Duet and that small 2-channel portable, because that's where my career had gone to being more portable and moving from studio to studio, it was a game changer for me, and I've stuck with them over the years. Still use a Symphony in the studio. I think the question was, about our chain. Going into that SSL, of course, the pre's on that are great, but we use a number of other pre's, use API. Got a 2-tech CL1B, which is, I've always used that as almost gold standard compressors for us, but it just depends on what we're recording, what we're working with. Of course, being more portable, we want to have small interfaces that just have great conversion. He's showing some of the Apogee stuff we have now, but we use a little bit of everything. There's no standard chain for us to create.
Yeah. So that you know, whether you want something like an Apogee Jam, or Apogee Groove, which doesn't, it's just kind of like an auxiliary based interface, or something like their hype mic. This sounds great. Are you using the hype mic right now, KG? Or are you
No,
just
no,
using
I'm
the
not.
Bluetooth?
I'm just using Bluetooth. Yeah, I'm not using that.
But all of these sound extremely well. Like you said, the pre's are really good, and you just have really good digital to analog conversion with all of those. So we like to use those, and you can have a few of them depending on your needs, whether it's the mic version, the guitar version, or just a standalone, and it won't break the bank.
Yeah, one cool thing I just mentioned about that hype mic, it is. I've never been a big USB mic guy until that one, because it does have analog compression on it.
That's great. Next question.
Jeffrey Powers of Madison in the panel here is in with any issues with licensing of a specific sound, like, for example, the Yamaha Grand.
Matt?
Well, you can't sample anything that's sample based. So you can't just like go and buy a workstation and record it. But if it's an analog synth or a electromechanic instrument or an acoustic instrument, you can sample that and use it in an app. If there's any questions, people should definitely proceed with caution and consult, some sort of sound lawyer, because there are rights issues. Yeah, absolutely. Matthew at audiokitpro.com. I'm happy to answer anyone's questions here.
Next question.
Mark R. of Tumwater says, can we actually run some of those iOS audio mini apps on the Mac OS under Big Sur?
So the new
Rosetta.
Yeah, Rosetta.
Oh, M1 Silicon. Okay, so this is a big deal. So the answer is eventually. So, Apple's really trying to sell these silicon machines, and they're like, okay, well, you can run all your iPad apps, but it's not necessarily that easy for developers, especially when there's audio involved and we're dealing with plugins. So one of the first apps we want to do is the Housemark One, and we wanted that to be a Logic plugin. So basically, if you have it, you can run it, take your idea on the road or in the studio, then go and load it into Logic and have those same sounds and complete your project. So that is on the horizon, but it's not going to happen overnight. And there's companies like Moog who are leading the way, and we've been working with them so that we can all shore up this technology.
That's great. Next question.
Mickey's back from the Philippines. How was the experience of the more musical minded having to learn the programming aspects of things, and or vice versa?
It wasn't a far stretch. Like I said, my background is in technology. I actually, NASA paid for me to go to college. I worked for NASA for quite some time in flight robotics, doing automated rendezvous and capture. So, as I say, it's not rocket science, and I've done rocket science in some sense, but it wasn't.
What you're saying is you don't have to be a rocket scientist, but it does help.
Yeah, it does. It doesn't hurt. I haven't actually written in different languages in years, but it's like writing in any language. The concept and baseline is still there. So it's almost like working with orchestral musicians. As long as we can speak the same language, we can get the point across. And I think Henny is the tech guru, so he can tell you about his experience and crossing over on this side.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I mean, the great thing is what AudioKit has built. And it just made it very easy for us to work with their team and understand, if you aren't that familiar with coding, if you're not that familiar with some of these languages, it's already built there. So I think that was, without AudioKit, we would have anything going for real. And that's, that the biggest thing is collaboration, and just knowing that, when you work with, people like Matthew and AudioKit Pro team, it's already kind of built in for you to kind of start plugging and playing into, start building these apps. And when we were teaching the students, he was going over and just showing the students just exactly so many other people who were working with, other other apps that's been built off of AudioKit, and it just works so well. So yeah, it made it very easy.
That's great.
Yeah, I would encourage every like student or young person in college now, if they're in a music program, to learn some coding. And Apple Swift is pretty high level, so you don't have to just know like ones and zeros. You can say like, hey, build an oscillator, run this oscillator through a reverb, run this through a low pass filter, and it's like almost like human readable. So I mean, these are skills that are going to go far in life. So I would encourage everyone to kind of explore that.
We've really been talking about this on Saturdays. We do a 1 hour session every week about education.
Oh, wow.
And we have all teachers, and we were kind of talking about media and education. And one of the things we've really been talking about is the power of, like, we can learn we basically in some ways squeezed all the stuff out that makes us good at what we do. Like, we're just, what we can test is what we're teaching in school. Whereas, you know, there's so much around, whether it's building with code or music, cooking, shop class, all these things that make us useful in life on a day-to-day basis. We've somehow wrung that out to just get to what we could test, you know, and it's a challenge, I think, in education right now is to get back to being able to create. Next question.
Speaking of education, Roscoe Jones, one of our professors, says, what skills should a student have before they get to your college classes? And little question here at the end that's tacked on, can talent be taught?
Oh boy.
Okay. You take the first one. I'll take the second one. But I mean, with talent being taught, I definitely, I would say yes, in a certain degree. You know, I think it's, you know, you're intrigued at first, right? And then you start figuring things out, right? Watching some of these old documentaries of these musicians or, you know, entertainers or sports players, they're intrigued, you know, and they just keep pushing themselves. They keep pushing. They're trying to learn. They're trying to figure things out. You know, if we watch the Jordan documentary or anything like that, it was just like that, never, you know, always trying to level up. If it wasn't my jump shot, and maybe it's something with my body that I need to figure out, or if it's me playing keyboards, maybe it's a different way to approach it. So I do believe that talent can be taught. KG, keep going.
Yes, as far as skill set, before taking one of our classes, you can come in from the ground level. You don't have to have a huge musical background. Everyone has had some tech experience. I mean, everyone has a phone. You're already using some of these things, and you don't even know it. And what our thing is to show you in an application how you can make that work in your musical endeavors. Whether you are the seasoned musician and longtime producer or composer, or you're starting ground level, I just want to start to learn how to do this. And I think, you know, one of the biggest things is it's not about teaching talent, kind of like Henny was saying, but it's about training. I mean, the reason I can mix a record or produce a record is I've listened to so many records. I've found out what I love about it. And I've tried to experiment to recreate that in some sense. So it's more about you've actually been trained all your life to get to that point. We just bring you to the class and say, hey, take what you know and what you already use, and let's apply it and make some hit records.
That's great. Greg?
Yeah, I was just gonna say I totally agree, and I think that the thing about that is the drive. That's the one thing that's different that you can't teach.
Right.
You know, they have it or they don't, and the ones that do are gonna get there.
Well, and I think that the talent oftentimes is drive. I mean, you look at anybody who's talented on the football field, on a record or whatever. Like my daughter's learning the bass, and I listen to her learning the bass 2 hours a day. Like, you know, like she's sitting there like 2 hours a day. She's 11 years old, and just jamming away on it, and slowly, you know, and getting better every day, you know. And if she's not doing the bass, she's doing the keyboard, and then she's, you know, and so the thing is that, but that's not. I mean, that's talent, but it's the incredible investment of time, you know, that I think that a lot of us, when we say someone's talented, it almost short shrifts the incredible amount of work to learn any song, to learn any bit, or have any skill set. Just takes, you know, 1,000 hours, 10,000 hours, 100,000 hours of work that takes to do it. Next question.
Michael Fraley of Dallas-Fort Worth said many social media peoples have had copyright issues from artists over someone actually promoting that artist and or a particular song. How do you feel about these things? So copyright IP?
Big issue. I mean, we stand on both sides of it. You know, I think as creators, content creators, we want to be compensated fairly for the use and reproduction of our IP. You know, early in my career, I learned get a lawyer involved and really protect your interests, because at the end of the day, it is the one thing that we do hold. What we've seen in the last couple years, because of the ease of digital sampling and other recreations, that there have been many issues that people run into. And it's an ongoing debate of you know, where's the line here that, you know, you've crossed over and violated some law in however you either promoting or using or sampling a piece of copywritten material. I look at it very, you know, I'm probably more of a more conservative in the sense of I just try to stay away from anything that could be a violation of somebody else's copyright in that regard. But there's a lot of flexibility or a lot of different views and interpretation. So we've got some good lawyers that help us out with these issues. Henny, you want to share your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, it comes down to, you know, getting these tech companies and these, you know, music companies, you know, more in bed with each other when it comes to the legislation of like, I don't know, just it's the same as like a new version of internet radio, you know, because you have these people who want to, you know, promote this record or promote this song because they like it and they want to dance to it, or they're a DJ and they want to play it in their Instagram live DJ mix or their Facebook live DJs. And, you know, they're getting their stuff taken down and they're getting their copyright strikes and all of those things. And it's not a thing to where they're trying to do harm. They're just trying to promote. And, you know, if we have a different way of doing, you know, just online, I don't know, just the way that you're actually getting your royalties and your performance royalties back to the, you know, the artists and the companies, I think it would be a lot easier for us to figure out if we looked at it in that way versus trying to look at somebody saying, oh, you know, you're trying to you know, steal somebody's IP. So
well, part of the premise why I'm asking that is the gentleman named Rick Beato, who does this thing, what makes this song great? And he's breaking these songs down segment by segment. You know, here's the guitar part, here's the drum part, you know, look at how this fills in and overlays with this, and is really teaching people how to not only appreciate the song, but how to create, you know, what that creative process is. And, you know, obviously it's, you know, promoting the artist, promoting that song. He's not using it, you know, to make thousands and thousands of dollars off of or anything like that. And yet he's still getting slapped with copyright issues from time to time, especially from management companies, you know, without even the artist's permission. And I think it's a rough area right now. I think it's a real gray area.
Yes. No, I think,
go ahead.
No, I think you're hitting it on the head. It's like we've seen so much change, and of course, legislation is so far behind technology. It doesn't matter until somebody is they feel like they are losing out on something. We saw this happen when we all went into the pandemic and DJs started playing over social media, and all of a sudden they just started getting flagged right and left. Because, you know, in some sense, yeah, the physical clubs and things are not there, which they would be paying a licensing fee for. Now that is actually a digital club room. So I do understand that there needs to be some policy around this stuff. But like I said, if, you know, this guy, he's breaking this stuff down and it's more so an educational standpoint. Well, where is the line? And if somebody took notice of it, I mean, are they spending more money trying to legislate this and really trying to police this, or are they looking forward to there will be a standard at some point, because
Right.
the law has just not caught up with where technology is moving.
Do you want to close anything out with that, Henny?
No, I'm right there with everybody, and just knowing that if you're starting to build your online brand, whether it's him breaking down these records online and doing it on YouTube, yes, there is a business model that's being built around that, and people are wondering how can they get if you're making money off this, off of whatever, then it's still going to be pennies compared to it's to me it's really going to help more than it's going to hurt. And I think that's what we have to, that's why we, we're part of, the Recording Academy, trying to be on the boards and things like that, to let people understand from a technical aspect, we have to figure some of these things out so that we can get to a place where if there is a fee, if there is a place that people can, be a part, just like, the college radio stations would back in the day, or, all of these other places that had, small fees that they had to play to play the music. It's the same idea, and we should start to think about that in this sense.
And part of it is the mechanics of it are very inefficient. Like an artist can't just say you can play our music. They have to talk to the person who's managing the CMS that interacts with YouTube to whitelist this, or to clearlist this label to do this thing. And there's this whole problem. We did an event where Alicia Keys and her own label blocked the content. But it wasn't, they didn't do it. It's not like they blocked it. The machine wasn't,
blocked it.
The apparatus just said, this is, I see Alicia Keys. I'm now going to, it's got its own issue there. Anyway, guys, I know we were 8 to 9. We are going to do an after show, you guys. I'm going to put this in there. If you want to come, you're more than welcome to. Otherwise, we'd love to bring you back sometime. I think that if you guys are open to this
is fun. Yeah, for sure.
We got quite a few unanswered questions for them.
Yeah, I know. We got a lot of.
Well, love the conversation. So I would love to come back. Hey, I got nothing but time on my hands and sitting in my house.
Oh well, we know how to
join our band. We have a band. Join us.
Such a horrible thing to say to us, because we know how to fill up time. That's the thing that we are masters of. So thank you so much, Henny, KG, Matthew. Thank you so much, and for all of us, everyone listening. Go download the apps. Maybe we'll get you guys into some time to show us how to use some of the apps, piece by piece, and get a bunch of people buying into it if you're open to that on a Saturday or something like that. We do some kind of hands-on stuff. It'd be really fun. So anyway, thank you all for joining us. For everyone else, we're going to start the post show here in just a second. A reminder that tomorrow night we're going to try this Clubhouse thing. We hear it's a thing, and so we're gonna so we're gonna jump on Clubhouse. So if you want to, if you're looking, we're putting in a channel into Discord so that people who have invites can put up their to say, hey, I've got invites, and then you can contact them and get them all sorted out, so we can get all of our folks into Clubhouse. Have you guys done any Clubhouse stuff?
Oh yes. It's a lot of music conversations happening.
That's what I figured. I figured you probably have done a couple. So anyway, this is our first try at it. We're kind of used to this. We've been doing this for almost a year, and so we have a very specific way of doing it. We're not sure how that's going to fit into Clubhouse, but we're going to give it a shot. Anyway, thanks again, guys. It's really, really a pleasure to have you here.
We need someone to play us out.
Where's Victor and his sax?
Yeah, exactly. So so anyway, so we'll see you guys in the post show and see most of you tomorrow morning. All right, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.